Hi friends, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. I appreciate you. I wanted to highlight a cold case that was solved recently, so I ask you all to join me as we remember Yvonne Menke. Yvonne Carol Owen Menke was born on February 15, 1940 in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, to parents Laverne and Myrtle Owen. She was the oldest child of the couple, having a younger brother named Richard. Yvonne was described as a quiet but kind woman. It's unclear of when, but Yvonne met a man named James Menke Sr., and the couple fell in love. After they married, the couple welcomed a total of 4 children together: Sue, Becky, Julie, and James Jr. They had a 5th child, a daughter, in 1973 that they named Amy. Sadly, Amy passed away shortly after birth. Over the years, Yvonne and James grew apart from each other, and they decided the best decision for the family was a separation. Yvonne, now a single mother, worked hard to provide for her family. Around 1977, Yvonne decided to put herself back in the dating scene, where she met a man named Jack Owen. Jack was well known in the area for his expertise in horse training. Yvonne and Jack dated off and on for several years, and according to friends, this was due to Jack not knowing what he wanted in life. Despite this, Yvonne still tried to make it work with Jack, even involving him with her family gatherings. During the same year she met Jack, Yvonne's home, where she lived with her youngest children, sadly burned down. Because of this, she moved into an apartment with her daughter Julie and son James. James lived with his mother for a short period before moving in with his father. Yvonne and Julie lived at 121 South Washington Street for nearly 5 years. And in the winter of 1985, everything seemed to be going well. Yvonne started a new job at Centuria Laundry, and her relationship with Jack was stronger than ever. On December 12, 1985, Yvonne woke early in the morning to get ready for her shift. At the time, she lived with her daughter Julie, who was 20. Part of Yvonne's routine during the winter months was to go downstairs and warm up her car. So around 6:20 a.m., Yvonne called out to Julie that she would be back in a minute. She responded okay to her mother and carried on with her morning routine. While Julie was preparing to take a shower, she heard what she described as a whip-like sound. She estimated 15 to 20 seconds later, she heard 2 more identical sounds. Julie was concerned, so she grabbed the phone and called her sister Sue, who lived about a block away from their apartment. Julie explained what she heard, believing it was a gunshot, and asked Sue if she could send her husband Keith over to check things out. Sue put the phone down to go wake up Keith. During this brief pause in the conversation, Julie disconnected the call. She decided to look out of the living room window, where she saw nothing out of the ordinary. She moved to another window where she had a view of the back alley, where the cars were parked. She couldn't see her mother, and she noticed her car was not running. She glanced beyond the cars, where she noticed an unfamiliar person leaving the parking area. This puzzled Julie since the parking area was private and no one but the residents of the apartment had a reason to be there. Julie grabbed the phone and dialed Sue again, where she explained she saw someone fleeing the parking lot. Sue told her to waste no more time and call the police. Julie didn't have the number for the department, so her sister provided it. Police responded to a call at the apartments nearly 10 minutes after Yvonne went outside to warm up her car. Officer Severson was first on the scene, where he unfortunately located the body of Yvonne. Yvonne was found in the stairway on the south side of the apartment building. He noted she appeared to have been shot. The stairway was described as enclosed and very dark. She was found lying face down with her arms extended around her face. Since Julie was the only witness, she was the first interviewed. Julie was able to give a general timeline of events, including when the shots were fired, and in addition to this, she provided their first lead. The unknown person seen leaving the alleyway became a person of interest. Julie was able to provide a vague description of the person. The individual was wearing a gray dress coat extending below the waist. They had a scarf wrapped around their neck and a stocking cap on their head. Julie explained the person was initially behind her and her mother's cars, but walked north through the alleyway. The suspect then started to jog from the scene, glancing over their shoulder during the process. Julie estimated the person was around 5'9", a height she speculated from the deputy on scene. She also described them as being broad-shouldered, but not a very large person. When asked about why someone would want to hurt her mother, Julie couldn't be sure. She did describe a strange occurrence that happened a day or two prior. Julie explained she picked up a call around 6:50 a.m. from an unidentified woman. The caller asked if Yvonne was home, and at the time, she was not. She had already left for work that morning. The caller pried for information, asking when Yvonne usually left, and Julie felt the question was harmless, so she told the caller it was usually between 6:40 and 6:45 a.m. The caller seemed satisfied with this response and told her she would call later that night, before hanging up the phone. She said she didn't think much of it at the time, but now felt guilty because she believed it may be connected to her mother's death. During the investigation of the scene, officers discovered near Yvonne's body a boot print in the snow. In this print, the word Arctic was visible in the heel area. A sulfur cast was created to preserve the evidence. Because of this discovery, detectives brought in a canine unit in hopes of tracking the scent of the suspect. The canine tracked the scent through the alley and eventually around a snowbank, where more boot prints were found. The canine was able to track for one more block before the scent stopped. A series of boot prints were found bunched together, leading detectives to believe the person likely got into a vehicle at that spot. All of the boot prints were consistent with those found at the scene. No other evidence was recovered. Yvonne was transported to the medical examiner's office where an autopsy was performed. It was determined Yvonne was shot a total of 3 times by a .22 caliber weapon. One entered the left side of her neck and the other 2 on the right side of her head behind her ear. They determined her cause of death was due to the large amount of blood loss. The doctor believed Yvonne was likely alive for another 5 to 10 minutes after the shots were fired. With not much else to go off of, officers turned their attention to Yvonne's family for additional information. In addition to Julie, her other daughters, Sue and Becky, were interviewed. Sue recounted the events of December 12th and didn't provide much else to the known facts, but Becky was able to give another angle. During her interview, Becky explained she found out about her mother's death from Sue, and she felt like this had something to do with Yvonne's boyfriend Jack. Becky described Jack as having a roving eye and always looking other ladies over, despite being in a relationship with Yvonne. She explained their relationship was so off and on because of Jack's involvement with other women. But his particular involvement with a woman named Mary Jo caused many problems between her mother and Jack. Police tracked down Jack at his father's residence, where he was questioned. Jack said on December 12th he woke up early to do chores outside. He took a short nap, then drove to the bank on St. Croix Street sometime after 8 a.m. It was at the bank he learned of Yvonne's death. He claimed he saw Yvonne just the night before at his birthday party. She left after 10 p.m. and he called her shortly after, where he confirmed she made it home safe. Jack called the relationship a steady one and claimed at the time he wasn't seeing anyone else. When asked about Mary Jo, Jack explained at one point they had a romantic relationship, but for the past few years it was strictly business. Mary Jo and Jack shared a mutual interest in raising horses and participated in horse shows. It was through this their relationship formed. He claimed the women knew each other, but were not friends. Despite Jack's statements, police learned through interviews with the Menke family and friends who knew the couple that for several years, Jack, Yvonne, and Mary Jo Lunsman had been involved in a sort of love triangle. For years leading up to Yvonne's death, Jack dated both women. Many claim Jack did it based on seasons. During show season, he was with Mary Jo, but as soon as it ended, he would break up with her and return to Yvonne. Because of this, gossip fueled amongst the community that Mary Jo was responsible for Yvonne's murder. Because of this new development, police quickly sought out Mary Jo. Mary Jo Lunsman met Jack years prior through his horse training business. She was very passionate about horses. When Mary Jo was approached by investigators, she became upset and asked if something was wrong with her daughter. She was rest assured everything was fine, but they needed to know about Yvonne. Mary Jo explained she knew who Yvonne was, but she was never formally introduced to her. She claimed if she had met her on the street, she wouldn't recognize her. In regards to Jack, Mary Jo stated she stopped seeing him on a steady basis 3 years prior. The only relationship they had was a working one. She cited the reason for this was because Jack was too unstable and didn't know what he wanted. Mary Jo did admit she and Yvonne had a previous conversation around 3 years ago, and it was about Jack. She called Yvonne to discuss Jack's behavior since neither of the women knew where they stood. Mary Jo believed it was a good conversation. She claimed she'd never had any ill will towards Yvonne. On December 12, 1985, Mary Jo claimed she woke up at 7 a.m. and completed some chores. She'd taken the day off so she could finish Christmas shopping. After 9, she went to town to run some additional errands before returning home for the day. Detectives asked Yvonne if she owned any gray coats, to which she said no. She provided 2 coats that did not match the description of the suspect. Her shoes by the door did not match either. When asked if she owned any other shoes, Mary Jo said yes and provided a pair of boots. The boots were Arctic Cat snowmobile boots in size 5. She gave permission for police to seize the shoes. Mary Jo was asked if she kept firearms in the home, and she explained she had a .22 caliber pistol and a rifle that was given to her by her boyfriend at the time. Police asked to see the .22, but Mary Jo did not have it. Mary Jo gave the pistol to her boyfriend the previous fall and asked him to sell it. According to them both, the pistol was still in his cabin. The rifle, Mary Jo said, was used for protection for her horses, but besides firing it, she didn't know how to work the weapon, even asking officers to unload it for her. Her boots were sent to the Wisconsin State Lab for comparison to the cast taken from the scene. According to reports, the boots were consistent with the cast in terms of the tread, pattern, size, and wear pattern. The pistol was also retrieved from Mary Jo's boyfriend, but it's unclear if it was a match. During an interview with her current boyfriend, he explained Mary Jo had a bad temper and was someone who could hold a grudge. Her ex-husband, Laven Lunsman, was also interviewed, where he cited that their relationship ended because of her affair with Jack. He also indicated during their marriage they went shooting together often, and Mary Jo was not afraid of guns. He claimed she knew how to handle and load many firearms, and she was a pretty good shot. He also stated all of the weapons she owned were actually his, and she fought him to keep them during their divorce settlement. Many friends were interviewed, and they all indicated in some form that they believed Mary Jo could be capable of murdering Yvonne. One witness implied that when Mary Jo was around Jack, she didn't want other women near him. And despite the length of their relationship, Jack was always closer to Yvonne than Mary Jo. They believed she was willing to do anything to eliminate the competition. Another friend described Mary Jo as very confident and independent. She didn't like to show emotions. Mary Jo was questioned for a second time about Yvonne, where she provided additional information. Mary Jo claimed she knew where Yvonne lived and was even able to describe her apartment building, but stated she'd never been there. She received this information from a friend 3 years prior. She also explained she was with Jack for a year before she learned of Yvonne. She'd never threatened her or told her she wasn't allowed to see Jack. She wrote off her relationship with him as minuscule, claiming her current boyfriend was much more serious. From call records, police determined Mary Jo hadn't called Yvonne's house just once, but at least 3 times during 1985, all with a duration of 1 minute or less. From a coworker, police learned Yvonne loved Jack and was willing to put up with whatever to be with him. During interviews, police also met Jack's current girlfriend, who recalled she had received 2 threatening calls and discovered nails in her tires since dating Jack. During one of these calls, she was told to leave Jack alone if she knew what was good for her. Because of this, she did leave Jack for some time. Much like Yvonne, Jack went back to Mary Jo and attempted to date both women. Despite many interviews, witnesses, and evidence against Mary Jo, police did not feel a conviction could be secured. So Yvonne's case went cold and remained so for nearly 40 years. In late 2021, extending into 2022, the Polk County investigators reviewed Yvonne's case with a fresh set of eyes. They made it priority to locate and re-interview witnesses. They believe since the initial investigation, it was probable that many subjects learned additional information about the case or had relevant information not reported. At the time of this reinvestigation, Jack had passed away on October 21, 2021, in Montana, and Mary Jo, now Mary Jo Bailey, had moved to Arizona. All witnesses who were still alive were re-interviewed. In addition to these new interviews, old evidence was rediscovered in the files. Recovered was a scrap paper confirmed by Julie to be written by her mother. On this paper was a license plate number and the phrase, "touch of class." with the initials MJL. The paper originally came from Yvonne's purse. During the new interviews, it was discovered this phrase was written on the bug screen of Mary Jo's truck at the time. After another round of interviews with Mary Jo, police decided she was not being forthcoming and felt there was enough to try the now 81-year-old woman. She was extradited from Arizona in December of 2023, where she was held on a $300,000 bond. Mary Jo sat in the county jail awaiting her day in court. Opening statements in her murder trial took place on May 20, 2024. Prosecution argued that Mary Jo became furious when Jack not only left her romantically, but severed their business ties as well. They claimed Yvonne gave Jack an ultimatum. It was either her or Mary Jo. They believed Mary Jo took Yvonne's life because she took away the two things she loved, horses and Jack. The trial lasted for 2 weeks where more than 30 witnesses testified. At the end of the trial, Mary Jo was found guilty and convicted in June of 2024. Prior to sentencing, Yvonne's children provided witness impact statements. Julie spoke first. "You waited in a dark stairwell to maliciously murder my mom. You sentenced us to a life with pain, sadness, and hurt." James also provided his thoughts. "To me, this is not justice. She got to lead her life, and we didn't live ours. But it's as close as it's going to get, so we can finally put this behind us. But Bailey should never be let out again." Mary Jo Bailey was sentenced to life in prison on July 2, 2024. But due to laws at the time of the murder, she can apply for parole after 19 years. Her lawyers plan to appeal the case. Mary Jo has not taken accountability or admitted to the crime. She explained to the bailiff that she can now retire and not worry about it. Yvonne Menke was laid to rest at Wolf Creek Cemetery in Polk County, Wisconsin. Hi friends, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, so leave them below and we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more from me. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. Thank you again for choosing to tune in. I appreciate all of your love and support. You are all the best, and I hope you have the best week ahead of you because you deserve it. But for now, we must part ways. So stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends.